Aloha, namaste. This is Radha Home, and I'm here to talk about our new moon solar eclipse. It is coming on Saturday, October 14th. And the eclipse window here in Hawaii is going to be 5:03 a.m. to 10:55 a.m., with the maximum point being 7:59 a.m. So 3 hours later, Pacific Daylight Time. And the exact moment when the moon and sun come together, forming the new moon, is 7:55 a.m. in Hawaii, which is 10:55 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. So this has been an eclipse we've been really feeling ourselves move into, right? We can say that perhaps just the opening of the portal of it really got a up leveling, which also had some very disastrous effects when Mars moved in to join Ketu in Libra on the, well, now I'm blanking on the exact date, but it was about a week and a half ago. And so this coupling, Mars and Ketu, is one that is associated with aggression, right? It's militant. And it is one that brings the energy of cutting off. Ketu is the south node of the moon. It's the node that is going to be eclipsing our sun in this solar eclipse. And it's the part of our reality that is related to past life, early childhood, all the things we know already. Because this is a transit, right? This isn't in somebody's chart. We have these nodes move within our chart, and we have karma we need to end in this area of our life. This transit began in March of 2022. So we are at the very end of a 1.5-year cycle. And what have we learned? What have we learned? Well, some of us might have learned a lot, and some of us might not have learned a lot. And certainly society at large, or whole groups of people, have probably not learned as much, because it's harder to learn in that collective manner, especially when there's agendas and money and other things going on that we are not necessarily all, aware of, or even if we are aware of them, we don't have much control over as individuals. This period of time has been a lot about clearing karma with our relations with others. Libra is the sign of harmonizing with other people, getting along, compromising. Two adult people who have mutual needs on the table. And what do you do to get those needs met? Do we bulldoze over them and just get our way? Do we fold completely and give away our own power? Or do we see everyone's needs and find a way to get them all met? Obviously, the latter is the one that we're aiming for, at least hopefully people watching this video. But ultimately, it's not easy. It's not easy to get along with other people. It's not easy to feel like our needs will be met sometimes when we have to give something in order to get something. And we all have age-old trauma, drama, and stories around this, right? We've had our own relationships. We have the relationship we had with our original caregivers, and we have our lineage. We have our past. The 2 weeks leading up to this solar eclipse is the period called Pitru Paksha. It's a 2-week period of time where we're honoring our ancestors. So in this time, personally, I've been diving deep into what has my lineage given me in regards to my relations. What were my role models? Maybe not even just from ancestors, but even from my living parents on getting along and how that works. What are my examples in society around me? And how have I brought that into my own being and use it in my own relations with other people? This is a big topic for a lot of us, and it can be very, very heated. And when Mars and Ketu get together, it is heated. It's fire. And the two together bring an element of precision, because Ketu is that node that goes deep, deep, deep down and finds exactly the thing that's wrong. And that exact thing that's wrong overshadows everything else. All the things that are right, nothing, because that one thing is wrong. So we find ourselves in a state of disgust. We find ourselves in a state of avoidance. And it's active avoidance, meaning it's not just not there and we're not paying attention to it. We're like working to not look at it. And that is different because it's actually giving our attention to something. To actively avoid something is to give your attention to it. And Mars brings in this element of the warrior. Let's blow it up. Let's do something. Because Ketu, as much as there's disgust, as much as there's anger, as much as there's fire, is very inactive. It's passive. And Mars is not. Mars is action, courage, discipline, anger, the desire to go in and make something happen. It's also the part of us that wants to individuate. So Mars in Libra is not doing the best to begin with, because it's hard to individuate. It's hard to have discipline. It's hard to have courage when you're always trying to get along with others. People pleasing and discipline don't generally work together, right? If you're in a relationship and you want to get up every day and do a practice and your partner wants to sleep in bed and stay in, it's going to be harder to do it, right? And then you might feel like that person is keeping you from your discipline as opposed to your own choice to keep yourself from your discipline. Mars K2 together can be very good for things like surgery. It's eviscerating, it's cutting and precise. It can be very good for winning a battle with somebody in court, but it's not good for connection and harmony and the things that Libra wants us to enjoy in order to be in this world. The moon and sun itself are actually at the very end of Virgo, and they're in a star called Chitra, and Ketu is in Libra, also in the same star called Chitra, which is the bridge between Virgo and Libra. And it's the part of us that is building something. It's ruled by the architects, the divine architects. Vishwakarma is the architect of the gods, of the devas. And Maya is the architect, the illusionist, if you will, for the asuras, the beings without light. And Vastar is this creative impulse to begin with that wants to make things, that wants to build buildings, that wants to build bridges, that wants to build systems that bring people together. And as we move from Virgo to Libra, because in Virgo, there's this heavy focus on the details, right? This high level focus on the minutia and making the building and all the things an architect needs to do and all the details that need to go into that in order to make a solid foundation and build a structure. But when we move it into Libra, we ask the question, is the structure helping us relate? Right? Did we build a really tall building where everyone has to walk up 108 stairs in order to talk to one another? Or did we build a building with an open space where everyone can turn around and communicate? And did we build this building with this open space for everyone to communicate, but everyone's just sitting there on their computers or their phones anyway, and they're not talking to each other? Or have we found ways to cross these lines of communication? And so this is one of the things to really reflect upon in this moment. What have you been building? And is it working? Is it giving you the connection you want in your life? And if not, where is it not doing that? What is the problem? And instead of blowing up the whole building, because the whole thing is now wrong, we can perhaps use precision and skill to get to the heart of what's not right and carefully work with that to heal it or to extract it so that we can move forward without just laying everything to waste because now it's all wrong, which is a bit of a Virgo thing, right? To have everything be perfect, have everything start. If it's not perfect, we just need to rip it apart and start again. It's a careful balance, right? And there may be things in our lives and in our relationships that do just need to be completely cut off or that do just need to be completely destroyed. But there's also probably a lot of trigger and confirmation bias and other things that are coming into play if that's happening. Very few times do we really, really need to completely lay waste to something entirely? And we have to be very sure that we've given our best effort before we just start cutting everything off left and right, which could very well be the way people feel. So we have, and actually I'm going to share my screen. As much as I love to talk directly, it's easier to look at the actual chart when I'm communicating this. So we can see Mars and Ketu were actually in exact degrees, like right when he moved in. And this is why a lot of the things we've seen play out on the world stage happened immediately at that time. You know, the Speaker of the House of Representatives was removed, I believe, the day that Mars moved in to join Ketu. The devastation in Israel and on the Gaza Strip happened days later, but surely had this energy as its impetus. And now we can see he's already at 733, so he's already past Ketu. The moon and sun here at 2656 in Chitra at the time they come together, 7:55 a.m. And Mercury is also quite close here. Well, Mercury also brings us skill in his own sign of Virgo, where he's also exalted. He's in his highest state. We have a capacity to really put things where they belong, to really discern the information that's coming to us, to even potentially communicate it well, potentially. And this can add to that quality and that feeling, though, of militance, because there can sometimes be a bit of a robotic quality when Mercury's in Virgo. It's like everything is trying to be right, but it's not necessarily, you know, steeped with emotion or passion or connection. Generally speaking, Mercury does really well when we're not too emotional and we're not too passionate, like the water and the fire signs can bring a lot of trauma and drama to our communication skills. But still, since most people do have feelings and emotions and are trying ultimately to connect by using their language, not just trying to be right, sometimes Mercury and Virgo can work more towards being right than being connective. So there's some challenges in our connectivity right now. And Venus in Leo is also not helping because we have a tendency to all want to be the king and the queen. You know, Venus in Leo is the partner in the relationship that wants to be sitting on the throne and be adored and be served and feels like it is their right to be the leader. And of course, in transits, we're all experiencing these things. In people's charts, they might meet somebody or engage with people who have different qualities that balance them. With transits, we don't have that benefit. We, of course, all have our own way that we already are, and we're going to still be mostly like that. But everybody will be having an experience. And one of the things that really comes up when Venus is in Leo is that we just got out of Venus in Cancer, right? Venus was in Cancer, then was in Leo, then went backwards, back into Cancer again. And of course, didn't actually move backwards. But from our perspective here on Earth, the speed slowed so much that it seemed as such. And now back through Cancer into Leo again. So we have a lot of time to feel like we give, and we don't receive in return, because that's what Venus in Cancer does. So when Venus gets into Leo, it's like, aha, I'm on the throne now, and I will not take any of this anymore. You know, I will no longer serve, and not receive back. So this can also give us the feeling that we are in charge and that we don't need to compromise with other people. And of course, across the way, we have Jupiter joined Rahu still, although now the degrees are so far apart, the effect is much, much less. So degrees really do matter, just like I'm talking about Mars moving out of range with Ketu. That's, you know, in many ways good. And also Rahu, Jupiter for some time has moved out of degrees with Rahu. But this still has a quality of fanaticism in it. And even just that the sign itself, Aries, is one that is related to war and is related to having, well, when Jupiter's there, having beliefs that are very black and white. It's this way or this way. And not a lot of room for all the potential, which is that very few things are black and white, right? There's usually a lot of room. There's usually a lot of gray area. this internal quality of Jupiter, because Jupiter's still retrograde, gives us some buildup, like beliefs that have been building up within us. And then it's like, you know, kind of spraying them out. And I'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to our lunar eclipse 2 weeks after. But the affect is still there because, of course, there is some drishti going on here, right? There's a gaze going on between the two. The degrees are not close, but there's still some there's still some exchange between Mars and Jupiter, particularly, where we can see these built up old beliefs, retrograde, it's also of the past, right? Coming across from our more warlike, militant part of us that does not want harmony, that actually wants to blow things up, make ourselves right, and is, you know, is not trying to connect or get along. So this is an intense moment in time for many of us, but it's also in many ways a culmination of what we've been experiencing and all the different things we've done. You know, we've had a lot of work on our communication over this last year. Since December of last year into this year, we've had a lot of times to work with this communication and our skill with our communication. Have we learned anything? Do we have better communication skills than we did before? This is going to be fundamental. Communication is always fundamental to our relations. When we get to the lunar eclipse, we're going to have all these planets have moved into Libra. So there's going to be a much different energy when it comes to how we're relating, because Mercury will also be in Libra, and we'll have a lot more bent towards desiring connection from Mercury, from the sun, and from the moon. But since they're still in Virgo, they're over here focusing on the details, right? So the eclipse is shadowing our power in the details, because it's like, well, all those details, that's great. You know, you can build all the buildings you want, but over here, your lack of capacity to relate to another person or to compromise or to get along is going to overshadow anything you build. If you're not building with that at its core and at its heart, then there's a chance whatever you're building is just going to be an empty building, and it's not going to be able to be inhabited and work and function. And there's also the question that comes back to that original thing I was talking about, where we have Maya and we have Vishwakarma. Are we building palaces for the parts of ourselves that are full of ego and greed and lust? Or are we building palaces for ourselves that are bringing us closer to the higher beings that we want to be? Are we moving closer to truth? Or are we moving closer to illusion and delusion? And each of us can only answer that for ourselves. And each of us can find, surely within ourselves, ways in which we're doing both. This new moon also brings us into Navaratri, the 9 nights of the goddess mother. And this is a really powerful time because Durga, the demon slaying goddess that we are honoring in this period of time, has many forms, right? She is all. She is Kali, you know, taking out her centaur and slaying each demon one at a time, lapping up the blood, allowing that to keep new demons from being born. Because of course, in the story, the demon that Kali is devouring's blood and its many manifestations is given a boon where each drop of blood creates more demon. Well, this we can see in our world, because every time we allow blood to shed, literally, or even just figuratively, it creates more life for that energy. There's more of that. And so she's trying her darndest to get it all, to kill it all, to slay it all. But then she becomes drunk on it. And she has to return to her true self, which she does through her meeting with Shiva, consciousness on the battlefield. And he brings her back into herself. In the whole tale, in the entire story, we have Durga being called upon by the gods to help fight this buffalo-headed demon who has a shape-shifting power. He can move into many different ways. Well, where do we see this in our world? Everything that we have that bothers us will show up in another way. So you can cut off a person. You can say this person is intolerable to me, but somebody else is going to pop up and they're going to have those same qualities. And maybe they'll be dressed like an elephant that day. And maybe they'll be a rooster the next. And maybe they'll be a lion another day. Until we heal that part of ourselves that is intolerable to ourselves, we won't be able to stop seeing it come up in different forms. And there's only so much cutting off we can do, right? This is karmic. This is cyclical. This is a wheel. So it's up to us how much we want to learn in this moment and how much we want to wait for it to end. This has been a theme I've been meditating on a lot. Do I want to wait for something to end and then be like, relief? But will there be relief? Because again, it will come back if I don't deal with it. It will come back in another form, in another way, in another time, in another transit. So I can choose to dive in now and do the messy work and get ugly sometimes. You know, we have to really face the parts of ourselves we don't like when we do this kind of work. We have to actually sit with the fact that we have a lot of imperfections, Virgo problem, a lot of issues. And oftentimes the things that we have with other people will come up in the form of health issues. They'll come up in the form of infections or skin problems or, you know, issues with our nervous system or other kinds of ailments. And that's another Virgo theme, right? Healing. This particular part of Virgo, the Chitra part, is less on that particular part or on that subject of Virgo, that aspect of health, but we've had these planets in Virgo for a while. So there's been a time where we've been passing through actually feeling sick from our relationships with others. That's how much they affect us. That's how much other people affect us. And that's why we want to cut them off, because it causes actual physical pain to be around somebody who's triggering those parts of ourselves. And yet there's a need to look at it. And that's why we call upon Durga. That's why we call upon help, because we can't do it ourselves. We're not actually able to just sit in all of the pain and suffering and, you know, run a life, you know, have our kids, have our jobs, have our relationships, have all the other things we want to do and do this work. We need each other. And in the story, Durga is called upon because the boon that this buffalo-headed demon has is that he cannot be killed by a man. He cannot be killed by a god. And so they call upon this woman to do the work. And she's riding upon her tiger and a lion in some regions. And she manifests herself in all her different forms of Shakti, her sweetest forms and her most fierce, because they're all a part of her. And she tricks the demons in different ways. Just like you might see a teacher sort of almost trick children by dazzling them over here and dazzling them over here. And it helps bring them out of the state of seriousness of something that's actually happening in front of them. Because we do take life so seriously. We need to be reminded that in the end, it's a bit of a game. Right? And this isn't to diminish anyone's experience in life, because many of our experiences are very challenging and sometimes horrific. But it is to say that our focus on that is what causes these events. Our lack of ability to be playful, our lack of ability to be flexible, our lack of ability to, you know, work with others gets us in these situations with one another. And so she pulls out all of her forces, and even all of her forces can't take on Riktabija, the demon with the blood that continues to propel more and more and more, right? Even all of her, she needs to go so deep to her root to pull out Kali in order for that to get taken care of. But then she's in a totally altered state. She's drunk on this blood of demons, you know, and needs to be pulled back into her state of calm and consciousness. And all of this she does while sitting there meditating. It all comes out of her while she's meditating. And then she takes a big breath and brings them all back in, all her different forms. And then she has her final battle with the demon. And he is shape-shifting from buffalo into, tiger, into lion, into flying bird, and she has to fight him on each of those different levels. But in this moment, she can see all the different shapes. They're all the same. They're just different ways in which we're seeing them. And when she finally wins the battle, her tiger jumps on him and knocks him down, and she's able to hold her sword over him and pierce him. Everyone comes out to cheer. Yes, you did it. You won against our enemy, right? You won against the demon that is bothering us. And what does she do then? She takes another long, big sip, and she sucks in even him, because he was and is always a part of her also. All of us are a part of her. She is our fear, our anger, and how that manifests out in the world around us. She's our love and our compassion and how that manifests in all the world around us. She's our lower qualities, where we're asleep, or where we're in darkness, where we're in shadow, where we're in guilt. And she's also the part of us that feels forgiveness, and the part of us that is the mother and that is nurturing. She's our loveliness, and she's our gratitude and our generosity. But she's also our lower qualities, because everything that's manifest here on the outside world that we're playing with is, if it's out here, then it's in here. And so we have an opportunity to look within instead of out. It's very easy to say what everyone else is doing wrong. And it's very hard to look in ourselves and see how we're doing the same thing, and how we wouldn't even see it if it didn't exist within us. There are times when people will talk about something and I'm like, I literally have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I don't even see that, because it's just not something that I'm working with in this life. So is it there? Sure, it's probably there, but it's not even part of my reality, because I'm not projecting that onto my reality, because it's just not my work in this lifetime. And then there's other things that I'm hyper fixating on that other people don't seem to care about at all. Is that because these other people are so bad and they're finding me, and this, there's some conspiracy to attack me with, something that I feel so much pain and suffering around? Well, yes, in a way there is that conspiracy. It's the law of the universe. It is coming back to me again and again and again until I can heal it. And it will come back again and again until we can heal it. So we have to make that choice. So blessings on this eclipse. If you can, maintain your calm through, yes, spending time alone, yes, spending time in nature, yes, meditating, doing all those things, but also really maybe diving into the conversations and dealings that you need to, not just glossing over it till this time ends, but allowing yourself to take advantage of this moment. We often want to just enjoy the harmonious times, and we don't really want to be, when it's bad, we just kind of want to hide. But if we can have those difficult conversations with people, if we can tell people how they make us feel, or tell people, not how they make us feel, but how we feel due to something they've done or said, how much room for healing is there then? Whereas if we just hold it in, bottle it up, and project that they're a bad person out here, that's not really going to help us. So this is a real opportunity for all of us, and it's going to really reflect upon how we meet the lunar eclipse in 2 weeks. So I'm wishing everyone a lot of love, a lot of compassion, a lot of self-compassion as we navigate this. And I see everyone really stepping up and up-leveling their skills in relations. And if you would like to know about how this eclipse affects you for your particular sign, I do a couple different things. One is that I have a written report that I did for this week's stars, where I break it down just in kind of a short paragraph, what each sign is actually experiencing. Because of course, Virgo is a specific house for you. Libra is a specific house for you. These are specific places in your chart that are being affected. And what your rising sign is going to determine a lot. And even things like if you are an Aries or a Scorpio, Mars is your ruling planet. And Mars being there is going to be even more significant for you. If you're a Taurus or a Libra ascendant, then Mars is your seventh lord. And it's going to have a lot to do with relationships being brought into whatever house that is for you, whether it's your first or your sixth. So these kind of things make a big difference in how you're experiencing this and what area of your life you're experiencing. And I have that written report. And then also I just did a live discussion with some of my people in my Patreon group yesterday on this solar eclipse and also the lunar eclipse for all the 12 signs. So you really have a chance to see what your arc is, what you're learning now and what you're going to be learning in 2 weeks, and how this axis has been teaching you for the last year and a half. So you can really take a deeper personal dive with this information. You can sign up at the patreon.com Radha Home Astrology, and there's a link below, and join my group. It's a free week trial, so you really have nothing to lose, and you can kind of dial in what is the exact thing, what is Ketu pointing at in my life, what area of my life is really popping right now, and what way is it popping, more than just even that this thing is coming up. You know, how is it coming up, and what have my lessons been that I've been learning, and how can I get the most out of this moment in time? So I hope to see you there. You can like, share, comment on my posts. It's always helpful to me personally to be able to grow my breadth of audience. And I thank you so much for your time. Many blessings on this new moon, on the solar eclipse, and just on this moment in time that we're all traversing together. Namaste.